And you know, one other threat is the loss of habitat. And I'm so pleased to introduce my colleague and my friend Dennis Kruzak with the U.S. Forest Service.
Thanks,
He's
Sandy.
the Endangered Species Specialist for Region 8, our southern region. And Dennis, can you tell us about habitat loss and what's happening with bats?
I'd be glad to. Thanks, Sandy. When we talk about habitat, we're talking about where animals live and what they need. It's food, water, and shelter. And bats need roosting sites. They need places to rest, places to sleep, and places to give birth. They also need foraging habitat, is basically where bats feed, and that varies from forest to field to farm and over open water like lakes and streams. They also need clean water. They can't survive with clean water, and some bats hibernate. Those that don't migrate have to hibernate, and they're generally hibernating in caves and mines. One important thing to distinguish is the difference between a permanent habitat loss that is a threat, the clearing for houses or development, and we're not talking about the change in forest structure from managed, sustained forestry, which can actually benefit bats if done properly. The highest bat diversity is in tropical rainforests. And actually Brazil has more than 200 species of bats, as you can see here on the map. Texas is 47, so as you get away from the equator, the species diversity decreases. During the peak, land clearing in the tropics was losing 125,000 acres per day. For example, in Brazil alone, between 1990 and 2010, they lost 143 million acres of rainforest, an area the size of Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, West Virginia, and 2/3 of Virginia combined. A tremendous land base. Now, as James mentioned earlier, bats are important to reforestation in the tropics. You're going to see a photo here of seedlings reestablishing a cleared forest, probably the seeds stored in guano. So what's going on in the United States? I live near Atlanta, Georgia, so I'll use that as an example. During the peak housing boom, we were losing 54 acres of habitat a day and gaining 28 acres a day of impervious surface, things like rooftops, driveways, roads, and parking lots. Over a 10-year period, we lost almost 200,000 acres of habitat and gained more than 100,000 acres of hard surfaces. To help visualize the habitat change around Atlanta, here's a series of photographs of land use change from 1974 to 2005. And all you need to remember here is pink is bad if you're an animal. The pink is where we've lost habitat. So you can see tremendous changes over the years. Another threat are vandals. They kill thousands of bats every year, mainly because they don't know that bats are important or that they're protected by law, and that killing them is a crime. So what are federal land management agencies doing to conserve bats? Sandy, we're doing plenty. We're putting up bat gates to keep people out. It lets the bats get in and out safely. It also minimizes vandalism. Some agencies are putting in small sources of clean water, like small ponds and livestock tanks. The Forest Service is doing many things to help bats. Our international programs, for example, are working with numerous countries, especially those in the tropics, to develop sustainable forest management plans. Our state and private forestry branch is working through state forestry agencies on reforestation efforts, including bottomland hardwoods in the Mississippi River drainage and longleaf pine across the southeast. Significant ecosystem restoration projects are occurring on national forests all across the country. The Forest Service Research Branch is researching how bats use forests so that we as biologists can do a better job of managing the forest to conserve bats. And one of the things we're doing is managing cliff lines. They're very important bat habitat. And on national forests, we maintain forest cover 100 foot above and 200 feet below the cliff line to maintain the integrity of the cliff line community. They're managed for public safety and the cliff line dependent species. For example, if we find a big-eared bat roost, we'll put a quarter-mile radius buffer around them because they are rare bats, and we want to protect them from disturbance. Man-made structures are also important to bats, and we've got several structures on national forests, things like buildings, wells, bridges, and we do survey them prior to any modification or demolition. If significant bat roosts are found, they're either maintained or an alternate roost is provided. And if the alternate roost is provided, it's got to be of the appropriate design and size for the species and size of the colony. And it must be in place before any modification occurs. So what can you do to help bats? we can protect unique features like these 48-inch diameter beech trees I'm leaning on in this photograph because they make great bat roosts. The other thing we can do is not cut down dead trees because bats like to roost under the bark. And it sounds like the bats are beginning to move over my shoulder, so we're going to take a quick break and turn it back to Sandy.